You know, paleomedicina has shown that with gut permeability tests, that even if you have few plants left in the diet, you don't heal the gut properly. So if a lot of people are okay on some plants, if we ate locally and seasonally and ate some seasonal plants, and none of them would be anything that is in the shops, because none of them even existed for more than 200 years. We bred them all ourselves. Broccoli, kale, spinach doesn't exist in the wild. It's not a natural plant. So if they ate locally and seasonally, they'd probably be fine. You know, some people can eat some plants. Not everybody has to be this strict. But when you are that sick, please, if you have autoimmunity, cancer, please understand that a fatty, very fatty, fully carnivore diet is the way to go to heal the gut, to allow the body to clear cancers, which tumours are basically just a healing mechanism. It's not a scary disease even. In my talk, I was saying, I don't think there's any such thing as autoimmunity. It is the body clearing toxins from certain parts of the body. And that's what's supposed to happen. There's no such thing as bad inflammation. The body's going through there, clearing the toxins as it should do. When it becomes chronic, then it can damage certain areas of the body. But, you know, when you put a fire out with a fire hose from a fire engine, it causes some damage, right? But then the fire's out. The damage is sometimes unavoidable. Same with chronic inflammation. But it's actually clearing toxins. So what you need to do is heal the gut so that the toxins are no longer getting through. And while you're eating plants, that's not going to happen. Keeps the gut leaky.
Hi everyone, welcome to another podcast, and today I'm very happy to speak with Phil Escott, who is a health writer, personal trainer, novelist and drummer who has spent many years in the health and fitness industry, running a gym, writing for magazines and training hundreds of clients successfully. And he also has a lot of experience in the carnivore diet, and if I'm not wrong, he's been doing this lifestyle for 10 years. Phil, I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you so much for your time and welcome.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you for inviting me. It's great. Thank you.
Amazing. Phil, please, can you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about you?
Sure, yeah. Well, it was a weird journey for me, really, because I come from a kind of Indian spirituality type background. And so that, of course, kind of fools you into a vegetarian diet quite often. And that's what it did for me. And I was plant-based for a good 30 odd years. And then I was pretty muscly at the end of the 90s running a gym. Never that lean, however much exercise I did, because I thought it was all about calories and burning them and this sort of thing, which it definitely isn't. And then through the 2000s, I definitely started eating some rubbish. It was still, you know, I call a regular diet plant-based, because people who eat meat generally eat more plants than they eat meat, you know. So I ate a load of rubbish probably through the 2000s, got pretty fat. And then in 2010, there was whisperings of it for a couple of decades really, but in 2010 I really got crippled with psoriatic arthritis and absolutely couldn't move. It was horrific. And I, of course, went even more plant-based because I thought, oh, well, I need to be really pure now, I have to go vegan. So I went vegan and I lost a whole load of weight, about 75 pounds, I think. And then, but I was losing muscle and bone density as well, of course, because there's not much nutrition in that kind of diet. And with all the spinach smoothies that I was having, that I thought were incredibly healthy, I ended up filling myself with oxalates and got kidney stones and didn't do much for the arthritis either. So that was a bad move. And then around 2011, I think, I discovered Natasha Campbell McBride's GAPS books and got into those and that and Jack Cruse's website on light and light, water and magnetism and that kind of thing. And those two sources, I think, really saved my life, or at least my mobility. And so I ended up going keto around that time and lost the last 15 pounds and ended up for the first time in my life really ripped with abs and everything. But at 120 pounds, it looked a bit crap, right? But it made me realize that I could eat sort of 4,000 so-called calories of fats and meat while lying on the sofa and doing no exercise. And for the first time in my life, getting really lean. So yeah, I recovered, and by 2013 or so, I could train again and put back at least some of the muscle, and so I didn't look so emaciated. And then I just realised I didn't really want these healthy roast veg that I was doing with my fatty meat, and so the days that I didn't bother, I felt better. So I just stopped eating veg. And it was before the carnivore diet was really very well publicised. There was a few doing it, Well, obviously, the whole of the Inuit culture and the Maasai and the Sami and all of that. But I hadn't really figured that out yet. And so, I went carnivore in 2015. And, yeah, it's been fine.
Well, it's been a long time, Phil, and like I believe now it's even like difficult for people to understand this kind of thing. Now it's still like a big taboo to talk about it, but I imagine it like 10 years ago.
It was not so common, let's say. Yeah, people even in the paleo movement were telling me I was mad, and then some of them said, "Well, I'm quite interested in this," so I started off a Facebook group called 100% Carnivore and Beyond for a few friends. And it was only like 5 or 10 friends, I think. And now it's got about 20,000 people in it, and it's kind of much more easy to talk about it now. But it is growing. I think the people who complain about it and argue against it, they've always got one thing in common. They've never tried it. I would say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to Raphael. Try it if you're well and healthy. Try it for 30 days. If you've got something serious to reverse, then try it for 90 days. And then you tell me that we're mad, because it really is very, very powerful. And even a vegan diet's not going to kill you in that time, so give it a go.
Totally, yeah. That's impossible to just stay in the knowledge field. No, you have to go to the practice to see it, know the benefits, and yeah. But that's amazing that you have all this background, as like in the fitness industry, in the health industry, like as a health writer, personal trainer. So when did you start, like in the health and fitness industry?
Well, nothing professional for many years, but since about 1980, around that time, 82, I guess, when I'd finished with all my hallucinogenic phase and, just being a hippie and living around the festivals in teepees and buses and taking loads of magic mushrooms, I started to get really interested in health, but also in the whole thing of physical culture and spirituality as well. And so it came with that. But my interest was more in the lines of studying Ayurveda and that kind of thing. The first book I wrote in the mid-90s was on Ayurveda and training. But I realized a lot later that if you look into the old texts of Ayurveda, it says that meat is the most nourishing food for the body, like amrit, like nectar. But we've misinterpreted it over here. So everybody just takes a load of rice and dal and warm milk, and then takes a load of Ayurvedic medicines when things go wrong, and then most of those are completely full. Well, they're full of cow poo and heavy metals quite often. So, I mean, that old knowledge of herbal cures, it is amazing, but generally you don't need them the fewer plants you eat, because you're basically just offsetting the toxins in the plants themselves, and so that's very controversial. That there are toxins in the plants. But as my daughter always takes a mickey out of me saying, I quote Anthony Chaffee, that there's 136 known human carcinogens in a Brussels sprout and 60 in the least toxic veg. And so some of the most toxic foods are those green leaves, those superfoods that the cultures never eat. But it wasn't until really the mid-90s that I ended up running a gym and training people that way, and I really figured out all the nonsense in training, that people go in and overdo it, train too often, they're messing about with running machines and pink dumbbells and things. It doesn't really work. But if you get you do some big lifts, very very abbreviated, squat, bench, deadlift, shoulder press, some chin, something like that, and train really really hard but very very short, then you get incredible results. But I hadn't figured out the diet. So I would just eat anything, as long as it was lots. And when you see that in the training world, that there is a lot of bullshit, and really it's very, very simple. And it is the same in the diet world. So we overcomplicate things hugely. And it really isn't that difficult, because for millennia, if we've been there that long and we haven't been lied to about timelines or where we came from or anything, but let's not put our tinfoil hat on too badly today. But you realize that we've always been predominantly carnivore. My friend Mary Ruddick, who you should get on the channel, she's amazing. And she travels around all the tribes, the really remote tribes, and studies their lifestyle and diet. And they're 90% carnivore to 100% carnivore, depending on the latitude and season. You know, in the winter they don't have any plants to eat. In the north, in the Arctic, they don't have any plants to eat. And they're fine. They have none of our chronic diseases. And so, you know, people say, well, studies show that a plant-based diet is extremely healthy. Well, compared to what? Probably somebody taking in a load of seed oils and chemicals and eating pizza and pasta and that kind of thing. But when you start to compare a carnivore diet where people have given up the plants rather than the meat, you see a completely different story. And yeah, I think most of we carnivores have been interested in diet for a long time and probably tried every other diet. Whereas vegans, very often, they get caught in some, and it's from a good heart, you know, they see one of these vegan propaganda films and think they're an expert, and then they go vegan, compassion for the animals, and it's healthy. And it isn't, you know, it's usually their first diet experiment. And they might feel some benefits to start with because it's basically a fast. But then, you know, they go downhill quite rapidly, and I've been there myself. And lots of my clients who I consult with have been vegan in the past and done a lot of damage. And then when you look into it and the crop deaths that happen from the crops that the vegans eat, really it's time to wake up, I think, about veganism. And yeah, I eat probably, you know, 1 cow a year, and a grass-fed cow causes no damage to the environment, whereas crops have huge impact on the environment. And so I think I'm more vegan than I ever was.
I agree. Yeah, that's difficult for people to see not this in this way that we were talking here. That is a lot of to speak and to tell and to share like all this knowledge here, because a lot of people are still thinking that this is bad for the environment, this is bad for the planet, and also a lot of people think that it's bad spiritually saying, as you started saying about the spirituality. Many people say that eating meat is it's not good for the spirit, and I get a lot of this in the channel, and also with friends, and even my brother now is in his own spiritual path, which he doesn't want to eat meat anymore.
Well, this is a huge pet subject of mine, having come from that kind of area where you're told it's incredibly unspiritual, unsattvic, as it says, to eat meat. It's you'll never get enlightened if you eat meat. I think this is very, very disrespectful, actually, to all of our ancestors, because in these tribes they obviously have beautifully awakened spiritual souls. All of them probably are that close to nature, and yet they eat 90% meat, or more. So what's happened there? And there's never been an actual culture that is that's vegetarian. You can't live anywhere on the planet in the wild, so to speak, and live off plants. It doesn't work. So I have a podcast, an old podcast called Carnivore and Beyond, and it's still there. I think there's 10 episodes, that's all. But I've interviewed very spiritual people who have got very sick and then healed their physical ailments and beyond by dropping plants out of their diet. Some of them spiritual teachers. And you realize that the brain works better. You just get more of a perception of life, but you're more grounded. So I think often, as a friend of mine says, who's been on my podcast as well, and he grew up in the sort of Muktananda cult, and whereas I was in the transcendental meditation thing. And he says, are some of these gurus actually enlightened, or is it just malnutrition? And I think that's really cool, actually, because when you do go on a vegan diet, you do get really spaced out. And you think you're in some higher state of consciousness. Really, you're not. I mean, I'm not saying none of them are, but quite often you're not. It's just a real spaced out kind of feeling. And that is not waking up. That's not spirituality. That's not enlightenment. Also, if it's so bad to eat animals, was God wrong? I mean, 70% of the animals on the planet are carnivorous. And we are. You can tell if you actually look at our guts. I mean, the vegans always say, we haven't got teeth and claws, so we shouldn't be bringing down animals. And I say, well, do you have a prehensile tail to swing through the trees and get the fruit before the monkeys? Do you have a perfectly adapted snout to dig up your root vegetables? No, we're unique. We are apex predators. We have been forever. We have spears, We've always had these tools to bring down animals. Before that, if the timeline is correct, we were probably carrion eaters. We would pick over a carcass because our digestion is very similar. It's even more, our digestive tract is very similar to a carnivore, but it's also more acidic than even a lion. So we have a gut pH more like a vulture or a hyena. So yeah, we are absolutely adapted to meat. And I would say that to people, really look into the spiritual side of things, because there are so many spiritual people now coming across to carnivory and healing their ailments, because I can tell you, there's nothing particularly spiritual, or let's say everything's spiritual, because all experience can be learned from. And that's why my book's called Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me. But there's nothing particularly enjoyable about life when you are in screaming pain sitting on the sofa and you can't barely even walk to the toilet. So I don't think that carrying on eating plants would have made me any more spiritual at that stage. And I've even heard of people getting their awakenings back. I have several videos on it, on carnivore diet and spirituality, carnivore diet and non-violence, ahimsa, that kind of thing on my YouTube channel, because it really is dear to my heart. I think a lot of people actually die because they believe that. Some of my friends up here, bless them, they're usually a bit older than me. I'm 63 now, but they're usually like 70 plus a bit. I was kind of a young one when I came up here in 86. But a lot of them have died from heart disease, from cancer. There's a lot of autoimmunity about. There's a lot of neurological issues. I see a lot of them with tremors, Parkinson's kind of things going on. And it's very sad. And these are people I've known for a long time. And I know what's going on. Their bodies are not being nourished. And the tissues are breaking down as the body eats itself, really, looking for decent nutrition. So there is no such thing as a vegan, really. They call us cannibals and stuff, but there's only one type of cannibal, really, who doesn't actually kill people and eat them, and that's a vegan, because they eat their own bodies. And please, if anybody is vegan or vegetarian and hears this, don't say that I'm attacking you, because I'm not. It's said with real compassion, because I've seen such devastation from it. A lot of people go, well, I've been veggie and vegan for such and such a time and I'm fine. Very often they're not. So many people have stood in front of me and said that, and I can spot a lot of things. Their teeth are falling out. They've got a very grey complexion. They've got sort of definitely a belly there, even if they're thin, because there's some sort of visceral fat. There's a lot of things going on, but because they haven't been diagnosed with anything serious, they think that they're fine, and they're not. If you look at tribes people of that age, they're incredibly healthy. I mean, as Mary Ruddick says, there's a load of myths about them dying young. They don't. I mean, there might be some infant mortality, which brings down the average, but that's the average. She quotes a family that she met where there were 6 generations that she took a photo of. The old lady was 120, her daughter was 90, and so on down. And this old lady was not a curiosity sort of wheeled on. She was dancing with the tribe. And these are people who are carnivores. So when exactly is it going to kill you? When's it going to give you heart disease? When's it going to give you scurvy? It doesn't. And I feel very sad for these people who do get caught up in it from the spiritual side, because it's very hard for them to let it go. And I've seen people even know about it. Even a couple of people, friends I've lost, have said, yes, I understand what you're saying, but I just couldn't possibly eat meat. I can't possibly do it. And this comes from conditioning. It's very sad. You know, some people get over that. I've seen many get over it when they get to that stage, because I was like that at one stage. Oh, I can't eat meat. Secretly, I missed it, because I'd eat all the veggie burgers and all the fake bacon and stuff like that. And so you're definitely desiring it. But when you go carnivore, you never see anybody making broccoli out of steak, do you? It doesn't go the other way. We don't need it.
That's perfect. Perfect said, Phil. No. I can relate to everything that you're saying, and I have experienced myself. Like, I have been doing diets for over 20 years, and I have tried all types of diets that are out there. I have been suffering from food addiction since I was like 7 years old. Like, I remember like very bad moments, like in my childhood, because of food addiction and eating disorders and very bad. I was like an obese kid until 14 years old. So then, because of a lot of bullying in the school, I just stopped eating, and I lost weight because I was also like growing up. But since then, I never managed to manage it, because my like fat soul was still there, and so I managed to put my weight back again and again and again, and so I lived all my life like this, and I thought this would be my whole life. I said, okay, that's it. I just have to do diets, and then I go back to my normal self, where I eat everything, and then I go on a diet again. But the diet's like, it's very bad, you know. Like, it's like I'm always hungry. I have to count my calories, and I'm always like, you know, craving sugar, and waiting for the junk day, when I can just, like, you know, kill myself with sweets and sugars and chocolates and cakes and pizzas. And that's like, what is this? What's wrong? You know. And then a lot of people still living this kind of lifestyle. And when I found carnivore, I thought it would just be another diet, but like in 2 months, even less than 2 months, in 1 month, I realized that, wait a moment, there is something else here that it's like I've never felt before. Like, I'm not hungry, I have satiety, I have no cravings, like, what's going on? So I had to change my whole lifestyle. On top of that, I have been working with the food industry for the last 10 years, and it's just like I'm not the same person anymore, and I can't continue in that path anymore. So now that's why I started this podcast as well, and I love to connect with people that are, you know, that live the same lifestyle and that have a lot of experience as well.
I think it's time that people stop seeing those things as food, because they are recreational drugs. There is no drug in the world as addictive as sugar, and every plant breaks down into sugar. And so, you know, it also gets us to have that combination of fats and carbohydrates. And this is very, very confusing for the system. It ruins your leptin signaling. You know, basically, for people who don't understand that, it's a hormone that tells you when you're full. And so when that happens, you don't know when to stop eating. You can eat tons, because you eat a good fatty steak, tastes amazing, tastes delicious. In nature, fatty meat is the most delicious thing that you'll get. And you'll get limited fruits maybe in season, and you'll eat them maybe in certain areas, and that's fine. The plant wants you to eat the fruit. It doesn't want you to eat the stalks and leaves like broccoli and kale and spinach and stuff like that. But it wants you to eat the fruit, and that's fine. But there is nothing in nature that combines fats and carbohydrates, if you think about it. Only maybe breast milk, which the only thing I agree with vegans, that we're only intended to have that before weaning. And it can cause a whole load of problems, dairy. Even raw dairy, in fact, particularly raw dairy. So that's a bit of a contentious thing that people have a go at me about. But nothing. Maybe in some nuts you get a little bit of a combination of fats and carbs. But it gets to that absolutely addictive bliss point. If you think of any addictive food, chips, crisps, chocolate, pizza, ice cream, it's always a mixture of carbs and fats. And that confuses our body horribly. And so that's what we desire. And it's difficult to break that addiction. You know, the sugars on their own are not really so addictive as the combination of fats and carbs. You eat a steak, you're satisfied. You couldn't eat another steak. Or, you know, if you're Sean Baker, you eat 5 steaks or whatever. But when you get to your limit, you've had enough. But then you could still eat a wheelbarrow full of Haagen-Dazs, couldn't you? There's always that, the dessert stomach. You know, but if you can tell the difference between addiction and actual hunger, then you start to realize when you are actually hungry and when you're not. And it is amazing. You're saying you're not hungry. It's funny because I'm 63, and I sometimes play in bands with people half my age, and I get to the people who look really great and fit, and amazing musicians as well. I play with some great musicians, but you get to the end of the gig and they go, I need a pizza. I need, I'm knackered, and I go, well, I fine, I could do the gig again, and then you think, I haven't eaten since yesterday, and that's the wonderful thing about fats. When you're in ketosis, you're running on ketones, you're running on fats instead of on carbohydrates, you have such stable level energy, and I always say it's like a log on the fire, rather than newspaper. Carbs. You have your donut and your coffee for breakfast, and then you need a Mars bar, and then you need some more sugary tea, and then you need your sandwiches for lunch, and it just goes on and on. You're thinking about food all the time. Whereas with this, you kind of forget about it. If you're traveling and you can't find anything, I'll eat tomorrow. It's great. It's so much nutrients in such a small package. I think one thing that just occurs to me here, actually, a bit of a tangent, but it's not that meat is magical. It doesn't heal anything. It's just our food. The rest of it isn't. It's toxins. And if you have a steak and a salad, you will have fewer nutrients absorbed than if you have just the steak on its own. That's what's very difficult for people to understand. There was a study once that showed that, where they were trying to see how much zinc was absorbed in the body from eating oysters. So they got a bunch of people, they split them into 3, excuse me, and they gave the first third of the people just oysters. The second load of people, oysters and black beans, and the third, oysters and tortillas. Well, when the people who just ate the oysters, the zinc levels shot up. The people who ate the black beans with the oysters, not much of an increase in zinc. The people who ate the tortillas, no increase in zinc. And they were all eating the same amount of oysters. So it's like sometimes my meditating friends up here, they'll see me in a supermarket or something, and they'll go, I've been listening to your stuff on YouTube. I'm eating a lot more meat. And I go, it's not about that. It's about not eating the plants. That's where the magic is. I think my friend Dr. Anthony Chaffee, he has a saying, 95% of the benefits come when you drop the last 5% of the plants. And that's really true. Now, people probably at this stage, they think that I'm being really dogmatic and militant. I'm not at all. I think everybody should eat whatever they want, vegan, anything. It's time there wasn't any control over people. And, from I think the last 5 years, without getting us into trouble and getting your channel pulled down, has showed us a load of horrendous things, and people are waking up about exactly how many lies we've been told. And so I think, and the control and manipulation. So I think eat whatever you like, but realize that what is the truth about different foods that we eat. And, meat doesn't cause heart disease. It doesn't cause cancer. It doesn't cause, and where did these studies come from that say that it did? It comes from studying people who eat maybe a little bit of pepperoni on their pizza. Maybe they have some ham in their sandwich. And these are the people that they're calling meat eaters. And they get heart disease and die. Now, if you go into McDonald's and you have a jumbo Coca-Cola and you have some of those awful fries done in seed oils with 100 different ingredients, and then you've got the bun, and then you've got all the horrible dips that are just proper chemicals, and they're blaming the ensuing health problems on that tiny bit of meat that's in the middle of the bun, I don't think so. So, when they do the studies on carnivores, they have actually, there's the Harvard study recently that shows incredible results. But when you see how biased and how these studies are, and how they're funded by big food companies, big pharma companies, and then the results are twisted round with relative and absolute risk, and that kind of thing, and it paints a very different picture if you actually see where they came from. And I think one amazing story to tell, if nobody knows it, where did Western vegetarianism come from? Well, you got the Hindus over there, and it usually comes from some religious or spiritual faction. Well, the really wonderful story about the Western stuff, I don't know if you know it, but in the late 1800s, there was a young girl, a teenage girl called Ellen G. White, and she had these visions. She was part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and she had these visions that you should eat a Garden of Eden diet because sexual desire is incredibly evil. It's incredibly unholy, and so meat enrages the sexual desire. So what you need to do is eat loads of grains and fruits and plants. And so she got this into her head and started publicizing about it, and people believed it, of course. And then she employed this young boy, to do the typesetting and help out with all the leaflets. He got pretty indoctrinated too. And when he grew up, he ended up founding a load of cereal companies in the Midwest. And his name was Harvey Kellogg. And we all know him, an absolute lunatic who ran these sort of centers, sort of healing centers, awful places. And he was an advocate of circumcision without anaesthetic for boys and girls to stop them fiddling about where they shouldn't be fiddling about. Absolute nutter. And he ended up, just never consummating his marriage, sort of taking on these kids and adopting them. And very weird. There's a film called The Road to Wellville. Anthony Hopkins plays him, but he was even more mad than Anthony Hopkins plays him. But so the next time that you walk down the cereal aisle and it says the Sunshine Breakfast, it's not. It's Harvey Kellogg's anti-masturbation cornflakes. And when you see that, and then the Seventh-day Adventists now, they're very big in the all the diet things, the American Heart Association, the lots of education. I think they're the second biggest educator after the Catholic Church. So they've got schools, universities, hospitals, they got all kinds of things. And this is where it's coming from. This is where all the nonsense is coming from. And it's these are where the studies come from as well, quite often. So when you say to somebody, look, your vegetarian diet, it actually came from the visions of some lunatic teenage girl in the 1800s. How do you feel about that? And actually, when you tell that story, a lot of the vegetarians will really listen. They'll go, wow, I never thought of it like that. Bit more difficult with the vegans because they've got all the sort of compassion for the animals and that indoctrination. Misplaced, sadly, indoctrination. But when you explain that to vegetarians, quite often they wake up and they start to think.
Yeah, I have a very good friend as well from Brazil that she likes meat, but when I talk to her about this carnivore diet that have been giving me so many benefits and this and that, she always says that when I try to increase my meat intake, maybe she has once or twice a week, like small amounts. But she says that when she tries to increase it, she can't because it's in her head, because she grew up in the Adventist church. And she was always told that meat is evil, meat is bad for us, and this and that. Everything that you just told us.
Yeah, it is mostly down to indoctrination. It is a shame, but yeah, I think if we can all let go of the fact that meat is really evil. I mean, a lot of people have woken up to a load of other things. The fraud of the monetary system, the terrible craziness in the medical system with what's gone on, particularly in the last 5 years, that we can't mention, and keep your channel safe. All of this sort of thing, because I do a lot of stuff in the sort of freedom movement. They call us tinfoil hatters and conspiracy theorists and all of that. And I play in a band called the Daz Band. And Darren Nesbitt, who is the singer in the band and the songwriter, he also has the Light newspaper in England with a sort of huge circulations, doing very well. And I think it's a shame when a lot of people wake up to everything but the vegetarian thing. And I'd say if you're one of those people who's woken up to all of that madness, just look at what's happening now. You know, the same people that are pushing lockdowns and muzzling of your children and so anti-social distancing and all of that, and experimental medical procedures being mandated. And the people who are doing that are the same people who are trying to tell you that the most dangerous thing is meat. It's going to cause cancer. We need to get rid of all the local farmers. They're trying to get rid of all the grass-fed farmers. There's Bill Gates buying up all this farming land and telling people that they need to eat more of a plant-based diet. And bugs, you know, oh, we've got to eat the bugs. Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. All of this crazy thing. So when you see that these people, you know, you guys who've woken up about the rest of it, have a look at the diet side as well. See what these guys are pushing. And then you look at their conferences. Where is it in? I can't remember. But I saw the menu of these people that are pushing these plant-based diets and trying to get rid of farmers and, you know, faking animal pandemics and that kind of thing. And you see their menu, and it's all game and meat, and that's a terrible hypocrites. But this is what it's been through history. It's been the elites eating all the meat and then giving people the slave food. You know, quite often they say, it was part of the film The Game Changers, I think. Oh, look how healthy all the oats are. The gladiators used to eat it. No, the gladiators didn't look like they did in Hollywood films. They weren't all ripped and muscly with abs. They were fat bastards because they could take more sword cuts. They were expendable. They were slaves. And so they'd give them all this sort of oats and gruel and stuff so that they'd fatten them up like a sumo wrestler. And not quite that fat probably, but, you know, these diets have been slave diets. I was a co-author of a book called The Red Pill Food Revolution that's still out there. And go through all the history of how this has happened down the ages and how we've been fooled into thinking that we should be eating plant-based diets. It's been used as a method of control by the elites for centuries, if not millennia.
Yes, I agree. I have been reading and listening to all of this as well, and it's just crazy and insane to think about it. But it's like it totally makes sense, you know, like because that's the way that it's. I mean, it's an easy way to control people, maybe, because, you know, you just give rubbish for them to eat, and of course they will have, like, you know, less brain, less testosterone, less energy, less health, less everything, you know.
There's a great book out now. I think it's called something like Veganism Shrinks Your Brain and Cow Farts Don't Cause Climate Change. Okay. It's something similar to that. I can't quite remember the title. Great title. And they're right with both. You know, this is another thing, isn't it? That they're trying to demonize meat because they say that it's to do with climate change. Well, I believe that if you look at the history of the planet and the different climate changes that we go through, they're perfectly natural. And whether we are contributing to it or not, which we're really not to the extent that they say we are, and it's certainly not dangerous, it's not farting and burping cows. Because back in the day, in the 1800s and before, there was herds of buffalo, mega herds that would go as far as the eye could see. You couldn't see the ground. There were more of those buffalo than there are domesticated cows now in the north of America. So did these buffalo hold their farts in politely? I very much doubt if they did. Right? And there was no problems back there. Nobody noticed anything. So, but from all angles, they're trying to demonize meat, and that should say something, I think.
It's funny because at the beginning of the year, I think it was like March or February, I went to the vegan expo London here, no, because of working in the food industry. I always wanted to see what is going on there, no. I'm not interested in the vegan food, but I want to see what's going on, no, because like these expos in London, sometimes they are like trying.
Lots of farting, probably, Raphael. I would say at a vegan expo, lots of farting.
That's true. That's true. And I was probably one of them, because the main thing that I noticed when I started the carnivore is that this kind of problem disappeared, but I always had this problem my whole life. And I thought, okay, I have to just accept it and live with this forever. But after a month in the carnivore diet, or even less, it stopped. I said, wow. So this Expo Vegan was like, they were like, most of the products were fake meat, like all the fake meats that we can imagine, like, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I hope this is not our future, because it's just crazy, like, to see all that steaks, like big tomahawks, like totally fake, and they would not even, like, there was no smell, like they were there frying it, and we would just see like some kind of water, like, that is evaporating, but there was no smoke, there was no smell, there was like, and the taste, they all taste the same. If it's the fish, if it's the chicken, if it's the beef, the lamb, it all tastes the same thing. It's just like, oh my gosh. And I wasn't in the carnivore diet yet. No, I started it like 4 months ago. So yeah, it was in January. I can't remember that, because I always go to the expo events knowing. One of them was like the health and wellness expo. There wasn't nothing about vegetarian or vegan, was just health and wellness expo. I said, okay, let's see what they are talking about, the Health and Wellness Expo. It was like 92% vegetarian and vegan. Like, they were trying to, like, oh, this is what they are calling Health and Wellness event. I think there was 10% only. There was one little, like small startup selling tallow for cosmetic purposes, no? But only him. The 90% of the expo was vegetarian and vegan products.
It's funny, isn't it? And those fake meats, you read the ingredients, and there's a whole load of stuff in there that you can't pronounce. And the stuff that you can is clearly nonsense. It's all beans and grains and seed oils and all that kind of thing. I mean, if people don't know the problem with seed oils, it was created as a machine lubricant. It wasn't created as a food. And so we're supposed to believe that this is heart healthy, when heart disease was pretty much unknown before 1910, around there. It was just not a problem. And then Crisco came in, brought in these seed oils, and then there's suddenly a heart epidemic. And then there was, of course, the lies of Ancel Keys and his 7-country study around the 50s and 60s, where he was asked whether it was animal fats or whether it was sugars, carbs, causing this uptick in heart disease. And of course he got paid off by the sugar industry, and the rest is history. He's now probably killed and made sick more people than anyone in history, this guy Ancel Keys. But what did he do? He moved to somewhere in Italy where they did have pretty nice long lifestyle, and probably they eat a load of fatty fish, they eat meats, they eat cheeses, they eat a lot of animal products, and he ended up living to 100 years old. Well done, Ancel. I think one of the greatest liars in history, and that's where it's all come from. And it's funny, isn't it? Because all those plant-based meats, and the vegetarians and vegans say, well, it's to help meat eaters with the transition across to a more healthy diet. Not really. Most vegetarians and vegans are eating rubbish as well, because as Anthony Chaffee often says, Oreos and cocaine are vegan. So it's not necessarily that they're even eating whole food plant-based diets, but if they do, they get just as sick eventually as the ones who are eating the rubbish. A lot of the vegan influencers, I mean loads of them. A friend of mine once did a vegan fail leaderboard, keeping track of the vegan influencers, just the ones who had more than 100,000 followers, some of them many times that. The ones who have made the inevitable "why I'm no longer vegan" video, and then they get attacked underneath. But these people are not just people who can just quietly go back to meat in private. These are people who are giving up their livelihoods for it, so they must be telling the truth, right? And something's gone horribly wrong. And there's dozens, if not hundreds of them now. I mean, you just put into YouTube "why I'm no longer vegan," you'll come up with 1 million videos. And it doesn't happen the same in carnivore. Now, the vegans always say to me, well, usually the ones in the honeymoon period where they're still feeling okay and no teeth have fallen out yet, they say, well, you might feel better on this carnivore diet, but sooner or later you're going to get really sick. I go, well, look, I've got rid of obesity. I've got rid of skin disorders, psoriatic arthritis. My liver was fatty liver with cysts on it. I've got rid of kidney issues. I've got rid of calcifications. I've seen that on scans. Got rid of brain fog, IBS. I've got a huge list of things that I had. I've got rid of them. When exactly is it going to start making me ill? By what process is it going to make me ill? Sean Baker says, I heard him say it once, he said, if I die from a rock to the head at 106 years old, the vegans will still blame the meat.
Yes, absolutely. It's I like the part that you say that it's nothing like super magical about the meat. It's more about like the things that we remove that are that are being very bad for us. So like I also have friends saying like, oh, I started to eat more meat, but they still eating breads and pasta, and that's nothing. They're gonna have problems actually. See if they do that. I think no, because it's nothing about the meat, but for some reason the meat has everything that we need. So wow, it's amazing at the same time.
Well, that's what people say, isn't it? That, well, what about the other nutrients? What about, nutrients that are on paper in plant foods are not very bioavailable because they're wrapped up in indigestible cellulose, which most people just refer to as fiber. And they think this is essential for digestion and elimination. Well, I can say that when you go carnivore, you end up, some weird things can happen with your bottom in the first month sometimes, as the gut flora rebalances. But eventually you end up with the best digestion and elimination ever. You do not need fiber. Fiber causes all the problems it's said to cure. It ruins the gut bacteria. It makes the gut leaky, which allows these proteins through. That is the root of all autoimmunity. And it's not the body attacking itself. And this is my thing with with autoimmunity. They say that if you go to a rheumatologist or something, like I did in panic when I first got into this state, and they say, oh, you've got an autoimmune condition, your body is attacking itself. Why is that? Well, we don't know why. Okay, so you don't know why, and you can't cure it. Oh, you can't cure it, you have to have it for the rest of your life, you need to take our pills. And then those pills end up blowing up your liver, and then all sorts of other things going wrong, very dangerous, usually hand-me-down chemo drugs. And you say, well, what about diet? So, oh no, diet has nothing to do with it. Even the gastroenterologists say that. Diet has nothing to do with it. How can diet have nothing to do with your gut when that is there for processing food? It's insane. The level of brainwashing among the doctors, but they mean well, let's not be nasty to them. And a lot of the docs are waking up now. So many doctors are waking up to this. Yes. And so when you see that all these misinterpretations in the medical system, particularly about autoimmunity, because so many people have autoimmune conditions, I've seen it reversed. I've seen cancer reversed. I've got a video on my YouTube channel of my mum's breast cancer reversing. My friend Dr. Zsofia Clements at Paleomedicina in Hungary, they have incredible results. They're reversing glioblastomas on high-fat, fully carnivore diet. This is the worst diagnosis you can get. Some great interviews out there with another good friend of mine, Andrew Scarborough, who is 12 years on from a glioblastoma diagnosis. And he had one of the most complex glioblastomas that had loads of tendrils into the brain. It had bleeds around it. Nobody with a diagnosis like that lives more than 3 months. And here he is 12 years later, absolutely fine. And doing a load of talks and interviews on YouTube and doing his own cancer research, really making waves among the cancer community. Brilliant. And he looks about 25, and he's 40 or so now. And this, you see this story over and over again. And with autoimmunity, it's an interesting one, because there's also a theory of molecular mimicry. So when they have finally twigged that the gut's leaky, these proteins are getting through, these damaging proteins like the glutens in wheat and all sorts of other plant proteins get through and cause problems, because they have a similar molecular structure in a certain way to a certain type of bodily tissue, So it might attack the synovium in the joints in rheumatoid arthritis. It might attack the thyroid in Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. It might attack the nerves in Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis. So I don't buy that either. And it was funny. We put on these events and conferences. I have a fantastic one in Spain last October. There's another one this November. But Anthony Chaffee was speaking there as well. And I in my talk, I was saying, I don't think there's any such thing as autoimmunity. It is the body clearing toxins from certain parts of the body. And that's what's supposed to happen. There's no such thing as bad inflammation. The body's going through there, clearing the toxins as it should do. When it becomes chronic, then it can damage certain areas of the body. But, when you put a fire out with a fire hose from a fire engine, it causes some damage, right? But then the fire's out. The damage is sometimes unavoidable. Same with chronic inflammation. But it's actually clearing toxins. So what you need to do is heal the gut so that the toxins are no longer getting through. And while you're eating plants, that's not going to happen. Keeps the gut leaky. So I was saying that, and then Anthony Chaffee, he came. I thought, other docs in the speakers and in the audience as well. Are they going to think that I'm mad? And then Anthony said the same thing in his, but he went a step further, which was very interesting for people who believe that there is any such thing as autoimmunity. He said that when the gut heals, the body still has antibodies against those toxins, but there's no symptoms. But if there were, if the body was attacking itself, it would still carry on attacking those tissues that looked similar because, it was attacking itself. But they don't. There's no symptoms left, even though the antibodies are still there. And so I think that completely disproves the whole autoimmune theory. And basically, it's down to the fact that you've got to heal the gut. And I'm sorry, everybody, when there's all these sort of plant-based protocols to heal the gut, it doesn't work. Paleomedicina has shown that with gut permeability tests, that even if you have a few plants left in the diet, you don't heal the gut properly. So if a lot of people are okay on some plants, if we ate locally and seasonally and ate some seasonal plants, and none of them would be anything that is in the shops, because none of them even existed for more than 200 years. We bred them all ourselves. Broccoli, kale, spinach doesn't exist in the wild. It's not a natural plant. So if they ate locally and seasonally, they'd probably be fine. Some people can eat some plants. Not everybody has to be this strict. But when you are that sick, please, if you have autoimmunity, cancer, please understand that a fatty, very fatty, fully carnivore diet is the way to go to heal the gut, to allow the body to clear cancers, which tumours are basically just a healing mechanism. It's not a scary disease even. But that's the huge cash cow of the medical system. So they have to keep all the chemo going. They have to keep all that going. And they fearmonger people. If you're diagnosed with cancer, it's not hopeless. It's not horrendous. The problem is to get rid of the brainwashing. And then when everybody around you and your doctors say, don't listen to any of the quacks, absolutely go the medical route. It's a story I've told a bunch of times, but when the oncologist, my mother's oncologist, when she was 93, we reversed the breast cancer, and he saw this. He thought I was a lunatic leading up to that. Wouldn't take any of his meds, just kept going back for checkups. And he thought I was barking mad. And then he saw this reverse. I just let him examine her one time. It reverses very quickly, actually, cancer. When it does, it can reverse very quickly. Quicker than autoimmunity, very often. And he saw it, and you could see him, he paused, and he turned around, and he said, how on earth did you do that? And I said, well, I told you how I was going to do it, and you kind of ignored it and thought I was mad. And I said, you're an oncologist, is that the first natural cancer reversal you've ever seen? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm a drummer, and I've seen quite a few. And it's funny because it isn't rocket science, but it's not accepted to talk about that. That's why a load of the people who found cancer cures would end up face down in swimming pools. Not so much these days because it's coming out, and I think they just can't kill that many people. But they did. They used to kill them. They used to kill these people, and I think now it's important to realise that everything we've been told is carcinogenic probably isn't, and vice versa, because they need to keep that cash cow going. It's huge. It's trillions of dollars. So another thing that people say, and they point out, and I know I can read people's minds at this point, What about Gerson therapy? What about juicing? What about these people who reverse their cancers on that? Well, there's two things to say on that. For every person it works for, there's thousands it doesn't work for. And when it does work, it's because it's a fast, basically. And so you're just not taking in any nutrients, and so the body gets a chance to heal. Trouble is, long term, those plant toxins build up, and you end up with other problems, and quite often a recurrence of the cancer. And you've also lost bone density, lost muscle, so you're less, equipped to fight anything off. So sometimes it can work temporarily, but very rarely. The cases that you hear are not very consistent, and it generally comes back. But if you see now people who are reversing their cancer on a PKD diet, Paleolithic ketogenic diet, as they call it in paleomedicine, are basically just a really high-fat lion diet, beef, lamb, salt, and water. That's it, And if they do that, then it doesn't recur. And you don't have any of the emaciation that comes with the fasting. And, if you want to blow up cancer by fasting, then do a dry fast. 11 days, no food, no water, dry fast. That'll do it. More than likely. That does amazing things because it forces the body into repair mode and it blows up all the cells that are useless, the cysts, the scar tissue, the tumours, anything that's in there that it doesn't need. You can do it more slowly with a high-fat carnivore diet. But if you're in real trouble, if somebody's there and they've got a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, they say you're going to be dead in 3 months. Absolutely. Try the 11-day dry fast. Nothing to lose. When I say that, 2, 3, 4, 5 days dry fasting, no problem at all. But if you're going to go for longer than that, make sure you know what you're doing and educate yourself in what to look out for and when to back out of it if, the electrolytes are an issue. But yes, that's the quickest way to repair a body. What do animals do? When they're sick, they go lie down somewhere, they don't drink, they don't eat, they heal. And that's it. And then they're fine. That's the quickest way to do it.
Wow. Phil, you're blowing my mind. I totally agree with you. Everything you said, I'm with you. And I think one of the craziest things that I have been realizing now is this that you just said, that the cancer is actually just a symptoms, of of a real disease that is like a metabolic disease. So, and then this is like just, I think a lot of doctors are trying to wake up as well. Like my wife is a doctor, and I know exactly what you mean, and so I end up having a lot of friends that are doctors as well that are still like concerned about what I'm doing, but I know because I love studying and researching and I know how they have been brainwashed in the universities and medical schools. So it's not their fault. No, they have been sponsored by the pharmaceutical companies to do what they do now. But I think more and more doctors are waking up, and unfortunately, a lot of them, they wake up because they develop one problem, and then they have to wake up and then they start to question everything that they have learned in the past.
It's very often like that, isn't it? And I love the docs who are out there, the carnivore docs. There's more and more of them. I mean, Ken Berry, he's lovely. He says that he does what he does now to apologize for the harm that he caused as a doctor, and he has a book out called The Lies My Doctor Told Me, and it became so successful, he became a bit of a threat, and suspiciously his house and his practice burned down within 5 months. And he's on my podcast, and I've got this great quote. I re-uploaded one because I listened to it again. It was from 2022, and Ken's great, but he had so many good quotes in it. He's so eloquent, and I was asking him about that because nobody's really asked him about all these fires so much. And there was this little quote about it. He said, it was very suspicious. It was just about the time when I was becoming very popular on social media. The book was doing well. And he said, whatever happened, they're not going to do it. They can burn down anything. I'm not stopping. And if you don't like that, you can kiss my ass. And I just love that. I love that attitude when the docs wake up, because some of them, they really went into it wanting to do good. And when you look at it, actually, it's funny how many of the surgeons wake up. You've got a lot of the ER docs and surgeons. They wake up before the ones whose livelihoods depend on being a legalized drug pusher. And, Anthony Chaffee, another good friend of mine, Sean Baker, These are surgeons, and then they're much less brainwashed. And also they have the medical knowledge as well. And it's great that they have that audience, because they didn't get that knowledge anywhere different than where I got it. And I've been through the experience of it, which is why people come to me when they want autoimmunity consults, because I've been through it. I know all the little tiny tweaks beyond the theories. I know the problems that might happen with a carnivore diet in the adaptation phase. I know how symptoms will go when you get it right. Even then, they will drag on a bit until the gut heals, and keep people confident and really be able to explain to them. But the docs who know this, they don't. They only found out from the same place I did. Proper research into. Don't study diet. Don't listen to any diet guru. Study anthropology, plant toxins, basic botany, and study deuterium and what that does in the cell.
Deuterium?
And deuterium. If you know about those, you will understand about diet. So deuterium's an interesting one, and it's another lens to look at the carnivore diet through and why it works. Well, there's an extra isotope on hydrogen, and it becomes deuterium. It becomes D2O rather than H2O. So my scientific understanding of this is a bit thin. For that, you need to listen to Jack Kruse or Dr. Laszlo Boros or my good friend Dr. Sarah Pugh. Look at some of their content on deuterium. But just simply, basically, it's the more of these extra isotopes you have on the hydrogen molecules within water, the heavier the water becomes. And so it becomes high deuterium. Deuterium level in water on this planet is usually around 150, 155, I think. If you see the areas where people live the longest, even if they eat plants, it's very often in an area of low deuterium water. So they have a glacial source of water. If you want really good low deuterium water, go and move to Antarctica. It's pretty good there. In fact, you find people going and eating the same crap, and like research parties, scientists, and they're drinking the water out there, and suddenly a load of things clear up. It's very interesting. So what is high deuterium? Fruits, vegetables, plants, processed foods, grains, all of these things are high deuterium. Now, a certain level of deuterium is okay, it's necessary, but when you get very high in deuterium in the body, it's like it damages the mitochondria at a cellular level. It's damaging the mitochondria. It's like, imagine a fat guy stuck in a turnstile. All the thin people following can't get through. Right? This is what it does to the nanomotors in the mitochondria. So it blows it up, creates cells that replicate badly. They don't really work, and so breed cancer and other stuff. People are curing cancer just by drinking very, very low deuterium water, like 12 parts per million or something. Now, it doesn't sound very much, the difference between 155 and 130. If you can get 130 water source, that's great. So it doesn't sound like much of a difference, but it makes a very big difference to the mitochondria. So what are the high deuterium foods? Well, all those ones I mentioned, they're all from plant sources. What is the lowest deuterium food? Animal fats. So a lot of people, we're also taught ridiculous things like drink as much water as you possibly can, hydrate well. That doesn't really hydrate you. It just pulls out minerals and you just pee most of it out. So you're not hydrating very well. So many lies. If you go onto a really high fat carnivore diet, if you eat lots of fats, the body actually hydrates itself from within the cell with deuterium depleted, low deuterium water inside the cell. It creates it itself. So you are actually hydrating with fats. The tribes know this. They'll take fats out to hydrate rather than water. This is how a camel doesn't drink, because it's fats. It's in that hump. It's fats. It's not water or anything. It's not like they've got sort of some water bottle on their back. So that hump collapses as they get rid of the fats. Then they eat. They build the fats up again, and that's how they hydrate. And that's actually why you can't tell how old a camel is very easily. Did you know that? So it's very difficult to tell a 5-year-old camel from, say, a 30-year-old camel. So if you go into a dodgy camel salesman and he goes, oh yeah, this one's only 5 years old, you might not know, and it might die because it might be old. So watch out who you buy your camels from. But yeah, so if the whole business of depleting deuterium, if you look at that and look at which foods are high in deuterium? It's obvious. And nature always knows best, because what depletes deuterium? Sunlight. You know, what increases deuterium or stops you depleting it? Artificial light from screens, EMFs, not being grounded, plastic shoes, artificial clothes, you know, all of this kind of thing. All of the disconnects from our ancestral heritage will stop you depleting deuterium. The nature knows when to give you deuterium in a few berries. That's in the summer when there's the sun there to deplete the deuterium. Nature works perfectly. It knows exactly when to give you that. Not that anybody needs berries to stay healthy, but if you're going to eat berries, pick them off the plant seasonally and locally and do it in the sun, and you have no problem. You know, when you look at it through that sort of ancestral nature's lens, you can blow up a lot of the bullshit in all the diet gurus. Great game that there's a guy called Anthony Fazy. He's very cool. He was on Anthony Chaffee's channel a while ago, and I heard him talking about this game that he plays, and I've used it in my talks as well. Name an animal in the wild that. So, name an animal in the wild that goes jogging. No, they don't. Name an animal in the wild that juices their food. No. Name an animal in the wild that eats the rainbow. No. Name an animal in the wild that, you see, you can go on and on. And then you can see that, you know, the animals in the wild, they don't need to know this stuff. It's like nobody has gone deeper into the science of this than Dr. Jack Kruse, whose book I mentioned and website I mentioned at the beginning. And he ended up a good friend. I've done talk with him in London. He did the foreword to my book. But I don't understand a millionth of what Jack says. I mean, it's such deep science. But he says, look, the lion and the hippo don't need to know any of this stuff. They just do it naturally. It's that we've become so disconnected from everything in our natural state in the wild. The social interaction. You know, I've got a lot of friends, yeah. So, yeah, my Facebook, got 5,000 friends on Facebook. Have I? No, I don't know them. You know, and to have a smaller group, a group of people that you actually talk to. How many people even know their neighbours' names these days? You know, and this is all part of it. The light, you know, getting the light right, getting sun in your eyes in the morning, getting artificial light out of your house at night so that the whole hormonal cycle can work. That's circadian health, circadian cycles and biology. This is how nature works. It's not all about diet. People say, oh, light can't be that important. Well, look at what they do to battery chickens. And another thing, vegans out there, carnivores are more against factory farming than anybody. We want really healthy food. We want the animals on the pastures, right? We don't want them in these horrible situations. And veganism, growing the crops for vegans, forces animals off the land and into these factory farms. So I would say veganism also contributes to factory farms, which I don't with the grass-fed thing. But my point there was the disgraceful conditions that, say, battery chickens are kept in. How do they get them to lay round the clock? They leave the lights on all the time. It destroys their hormones. They're expendable, these poor creatures. And they don't last long, but it doesn't matter because they've got more and they can just get them in and they can lay eggs and then they die and whatever. But this is what happens. It's like the amount of women who work nights who get breast cancer. Huge, huge percentage. Because a lot of these breast cancers are hormonally driven. And, you know, getting the light right, getting the sun right, getting grounding right, getting the emotional traumas out, tapping, EFT, all this kind of thing, very, very useful. Get on that carnivore diet and the hormones balance and the tumours disappear, as you can see. So, yeah, the light is extremely important. All of these disconnects are important. But the thing is, if you get... if you've got some real screaming autoimmune disease, just changing the bulbs for red bulbs in your house isn't going to do much at that stage. So this is why going onto a fast and then into a carnivore diet, it's just amazing. That is the quickest way to get out of pain. And then that's going to work if you get all these other ancestral disconnects sorted out. It's not very difficult. You don't have to go live in the jungle or in a cave. You don't have to do that. And anyway, us sort of soft Westerners wouldn't last 5 minutes out there anyway. But you can fool your body into doing that. Don't miss a sunrise. Don't look at your phone when you wake up. If you do have your phone in your room, have it on a really red filter, have it on airplane mode. Sort out the light in your house. You know, when the sun goes down outside, don't have artificial light. We have a screen that goes over the TV that blocks out the blue light. I got 3 snakes in the living room. Got a boa constrictor and a royal python and a corn snake, and they have their tanks, you know, their vivariums, and you just switch it on to very dim red light in the evening, and that bounces out into the room, and that's all we have. And so just keep the light down, and don't stare at your screen late at night. Don't. You're telling your body it's midday all the time. And however well you eat, if you're not sleeping well at night because you've messed up your circadian, your melatonin cortisol cycle, you're not going to heal, because at nighttime is when the healing happens. So, you know, this all goes hand in hand. And when you look at veganism, they don't talk about this. You know, they don't talk about it at all. They're so disassociated from nature. And again, I'm not attacking any vegans. I'm attacking veganism because I think it's actually an evil New World Order cult, and get out of it as quick as you can. If you're in doubt, look at the carnivore docs, the ones that I mentioned. Look what they look like, and then compare them to the vegan docs. You know, they're spaced out. They slur their words. They're emaciated, and they just don't look well. And just compare them. You tell me. You look at all the carnivore docs and the vegan docs. You tell me who looks healthy.
100%. Yeah, it's a lot of things. Like I love that you mentioned as well that it's not only like the diet, you know, it's also like all the ancestor lifestyle, you know, about like grounding and, you know, walking barefoot, getting sunlights, and, you know, getting rid of the artificial lights and the circadian. I actually bought one book now, Circadian Code or something like that, because I know it's not only, you know, I think the diet is very important. What we eat affects us a lot, but there are other things as well that are affecting our health. And I think we have to. But again, we always gonna come back to the ancestors' lifestyle.
Totally. I think it's important to reconnect with this, and also the social aspect, because some people out there who are already carnivore or experiencing this feel that we were talking just before we came on air about some people feeling very isolated with this, and people think they're mad, their friends think they're mad. And this whole business of looking at it through the ancestral lens is very important. Online is great. The fact that we do these podcasts, these talks, gets it out to people. But I'm really into actually meeting up and having these experiences together. You know, I do a lot of festivals, and a lot of people are waking up at the festivals now when they used to be kind of very vegan-y. You know, we headline these festivals with the Daz Band around the country, and we got one in Canada actually coming up, which will be fun. But people are waking up to this, and I'd love to give a plug for our event in. Please put a link to it below. I'll send you a bio and links and stuff like that. But
yes.
We have an event, and please, Raphael, if you're around, you are so welcome to it. Please come along. We've got this Spain event that we do that I mentioned before. It's a real high-ticket one, and people come from all over the world to hang out for a week with their heroes, and it's a different kind of thing. But these are people who generally know about it, you know. But we have an event that is just a weekend event, August 16th, 17th, in Merseyside, Rainford, in Merseyside, up here. And it will be talks from some of the most amazing people. We've got Mary Ruddick talking. She'll be on Zoom actually because she's in America. But we've got Stephen Thomas and Richard Smith, some of the most knowledgeable guys I've ever met, good friends of mine online, with all the biochemistry, explain to you all the science of this. They're incredible. We got Dr. David Unwin and Jen Unwin, they're the two doctors who live quite near here, who are very well known now, who are going against the medical system in their practice and reversing everyone's diabetes with keto diets. They're fantastic. They're coming. I've been wanting to get them to one of these events for a while. And we've got Sarah Pugh for all the quantum stuff. You want to come on and understand about all of this light, water and magnetism. Sarah is so fascinating. And she'll be there. And Nikita Stark, she's fantastic too. And we're playing with the Daz Band in the evening. She might even do a couple of her songs as well, because she's a great musician too. So we back her up on that. But she is she runs When Push Comes to Shove, all about natural birth and all the disconnects there and the horrible things that really get done to people during the birth process. And that's where it all starts. Because, you know, all these cesareans, and I was cesarean, how much did that contribute? Because you don't get seeded with the natural gut bacteria in the birth canal. And so even at birth, you're in trouble. And then that causes problems later on. And so when you see all of this and put it all together, if you come to this weekend, I mean, it's great fun. There's workshops, there's natural movement workshops, breath work workshops, all kinds of stuff going on. Even we got ice plunges and cold plunges. And so that is that's a great event. Come along and have a listen at that. Also, Nikita, also not only the birth stuff, but she goes into all the trauma release. My friend Mighty Goodson as well is speaking on all that sort of trauma release, because that's something tribes don't have too. They have a real natural happiness. They know who they are. They live in the present. There's not so much trauma. There's not so much fight or flight mode, you know, even down to your houses. You know, oh, I've got to pay the mortgage. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. These tribes, they build a house. Nobody comes and repossesses it, right? They're not thinking about this all the time. All these modern day stresses. And so, yeah, to look at the whole emotional side. But this event is great. And so lots of great food, music, cooking food over fire pits outside, lots of stuff going on. The website is ancestralhealthfestival.com. Check it out. You can see all the speakers there, all the details of how to book. There's camping, glamping. But I think that these events, they're so important for people to actually come together, and people are making lifelong friendships. Oh, you're from where? My God, I didn't think there was anybody around there thinking like this. Great. And then they have their own sort of meetups, usually spelt MEAT, around the country. And great social networks come locally, because I think this is important, you know. This whole globalism, anything with global on it it's dodgy. It's nice that we can reach a lot of people online, but, you know, it's the local groups and local association and, you know, relationships that are so important that we've forgotten. And that's what you get at these events. So I'm organising that with my good friend Lydia Olka. And have a look at the event page and come along. It's there, you know, there are limited places for camping, but I want to do this event every year and get people along to have a taste of this. I think if you come along to that weekend, you will learn pretty much all of the useful stuff that took me years lying on the sofa in pain, in research. Most of my money that I had lying around, you know, I'm useless at making money, but I had some from an inheritance back then, thank God, so I could do all this research. But you'll come away knowing more than I did, probably even by the time I wrote my book. You'll come away with more knowledge from this weekend. So come on down.
Wow, fantastic, Phil. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, it looks amazing. I got all the notes here and everything. I love this kind of event. I'm actually going. I'm looking for these events because I also agree with you that a community is more important than all this online stuff and friends from Instagram, Facebook. I'm actually going to the Health Summit that is happening in London. I think it's 14 or 13 of September, if I'm not wrong. There's going to be a lot of things about health and biohacking and I love this. I'm in this movement now, and I want to spend my next 10 years and for the rest of my life as well talking about health, connecting about with people that live the same lifestyle. Just to I want to help myself, and I want to help other people that I was promoting like bad and junk food in the past. So that's my
it's also I find these things when you actually meet in person and make these contacts, it's much more useful than online. And so as particularly as a podcaster, I love going to these because then you make great contacts with amazing people to get on your podcast too. Because you wait till you hear Sarah Pugh, you'll be going, she's got to come on my podcast. She's incredible, you know.
Totally. Fantastic. Phil, I would like to ask you, because I noticed you saying about the dairy, no, and raw dairy as well. So what's your opinion about it? Because I still having it.
Well, the thing is, if you go to a carnivore diet with a load of dairy, you know, if you have something like diabetes, or you're just a bit overweight or whatever minor thing that you want to fix, and I do count diabetes as minor because it's a very easy thing to reverse. Couple of months, it's gone. Type 2, that is. Type 1, a little more complicated. So, yeah, dairy. Well, now a lot of people think that they're lactose intolerant. So they go, oh, I can't take dairy. Every time I have dairy, I have some stomach issue, this and that happens. But then I tried raw dairy. Oh, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. Okay, so what's happened here? When it's pasteurized, the lactase is destroyed that helps you to digest the lactose. So you're going to have some issues. But it also destroys a load of the growth factors in there, which are basically designed to make a small animal into a large animal. So a little while ago, it was at the Public Health Collaboration a couple of years ago in Sheffield, and I was walking around the Peak District with Sophia Clements from Paleomedicina. She happened to drop into the conversation that she thinks raw dairy is worse than pasteurized. And I thought, okay, I've got to do a little video on this, so we just got my phone out. It's on my YouTube channel. If you look for Phil Escott, Sophia Clements, you'll find these 2 little videos. And she was saying, yeah, it's worse. There is also a podcast episode, a full podcast episode I did with her after that. And that's somebody else you definitely want to get on your channel when you can. She's difficult to pin down. Sarah's much easier, but anyway, I digress. So she's saying basically that when you have pasteurized dairy, you notice problems immediately. But when you have raw dairy, because those growth factors are going into an adult animal, what would those growth factors cause that are supposed to cause loads of cell replication and growing from a small animal to a big animal? Well, they cause unusual cell replication, read cancer. So years down the line, somebody might get cancer and it might be down to the raw dairy. Well, I mean, these days it's very difficult to tell with what they're spraying on us, the EMFs, everything else that can contribute to cancer, which isn't just food. It might be very difficult to tell. But in the raw dairy, you have more growth factors, not designed for adult animals. Let's play that game again. Name an animal in the wild that eats dairy after weaning. There isn't one. It doesn't happen. And it didn't happen in the tribes either until they became pastoral herders, like the Maasai, and they'll have blood, milk and meat. And so, but still not such an ideal diet, I don't think, as the Inuit up north. But still, they're healthy. But we never had that dairy. Imagine the Native American Indians when they used to be like 7 foot tall and absolute proud warriors, and they lived to 130 sometimes, and they ate mostly buffalo. Now you imagine the guy, he's galloping along on a horse, he's hunting that buffalo, he's got his spear. Does he jump off and try and get underneath and start milking it? No, he'd get trampled to death, right? No, they didn't do that. The tribes do not really have dairy. So that's the problem with dairy. Also, because it is a mixture of carbs and fats, it is addictive. I mean, if I do have dairy very rarely, but it just every now and again. Sometimes I think, right, I'm going to get some ground beef and I'm going to make some burger patties, and if I eat that, I can maybe eat 2 of them. If I melt some cheese on the top of it, I can eat 4 of them because it's just too delicious. It's more delicious than nature intended. It's hyper palatable. So it's kind of an addictive food. So you will eat too much of it. And that's how it's designed for young animals. So basically it's to do with the growth factors in there and causing unusual cell replication, and we're not designed for it. And I do agree with the vegans on that, but not for the same reasons. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people have, beef, butter, bacon and eggs kind of carnivore diet. And it's so much more healthy than a regular diet. And because you're having the dairy more into the fatty range, where a lot of the milk proteins and growth factors have been taken out, then people get on better with butter than they do with milk. So ghee, although it is still dairy, people go, oh, well, ghee isn't dairy. No, if you're sick, like Sophia says, they put at Paleomedicina, they put dairy up as bad as grains and seed oils. They're that strict about it. They say don't even have a few molecules of it when you're trying to heal something serious. So the ghee, no, it's got less of the milk proteins than milk, obviously, but it still is dairy. Sorry, guys. Then you got butter, then you got cheese, then you got like yogurts, and then into the milk. And that's how they are from least damaging to the most damaging. So yeah, utterly delicious. If I could eat cheese all day, I would. But it also is a factor in when women go carnivore and they say, I can't lose weight, or they get to a weight plateau. Well, let's not say lose weight. Let's say lose fat, because we don't want to lose weight. We don't want to lose bone density and muscle mass. We don't want to go to these criminal organizations like Weight Watchers and Slimming World that are actually just set up for repeat business. Dreadful places. But if they then cut out the dairy, you often see that weight loss, fat loss plateau disappear, and they suddenly start losing fat again. So there's hormonal issues with it. It's hyperpalatable. It has dangerous growth factors in it, and it's utterly delicious, which is a shame.
Got you. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, sometimes I try to have it, but I go for the raw one because I can find a shop here in London that sells raw dairy. But I will try to decrease it a little bit because. Yeah.
Well, people go mad when you say that raw dairy is damaging, because it's a proper cult as well, the whole raw milk cult. And so I remember when I put that little video up, and people were coming up underneath going, "You're so gullible, Phil. Do you just believe anything? Now you believe that raw dairy's bad." I don't. I'm just putting across this idea that it's a possibility. And and there we are laughing with Sophia and just having saying, well, actually if you do have dairy, best to have that kind of plastic American cheese and wear it as a hat. That was our conclusion about how to have dairy safely. And then people are coming up underneath going, why, how can you possibly believe her? What am I supposed to do? Punch her in the face because she thinks that raw dairy's bad? No, keep an open mind in all these things and listen to these people, because, people are criticizing Sophia for saying that. Look at the results they have in Paleomedicina. Nobody has such good percentage of cancer reversals. 100% compliance, 100% success rate, they reckon. People don't heal from serious things because they say, oh, well, I'll just have a little bit of that here, a little bit of that there. At that stage, you can't do it. If you're healthy and strong and robust, you should be able to eat more things. But if you're not, and you're trying to heal something, you've got to be strict, at least for a while, at least until symptom-free. And they realise that. And if they're putting dairy up as bad as seed oils and grains, I would say anybody with cancer or autoimmunity out there, consider that. If you're healthy and you want a bit of butter and cheese now and again, why not? Enjoy yourself. It's fine. But I'm talking mostly from the perspective of people that I see in private consultations. And they really need to go strict and heal.
Brilliant, Phil. Wow, I have so many questions for you yet, because it's amazing to talk with you. Really, that's being music for my ears. I'm really enjoying it. But I don't want this podcast to go more than an hour and a half, and we are almost there already. So
yeah, we can do another one. But I think 90 minutes is a good time. That's what I kind of think when I do my podcast. When you get these 3-hour ones, well, I'll listen to them because I'm interested. But most people, they won't get that far. But yeah,
exactly. No, we're gonna have to book another one. But Phil, how is your work today? How does it work?
What do I do? You mean?
Yeah.
Well, I struggle to pay bills and I bounce around my overdraft limit. Because do you know what? When the vegans say you're only in it for the money, you're a shill for the meat industry. I want to know which meat industry. I want them to come around and look for my Ferrari that they're buying me to spread all this dangerous misinformation. There isn't very much you can sell as a carnivore, because 99.9% of supplements are useless. They're not absorbed. They're full of fillers that keep the gut leaky, and they're high in deuterium. So there's really very little I can sell except for just courses. So what do? Well, I do private consults. You can find all about that, philescott.com. You can see that. Sorry, I'm pinging. Still got my mail open. Very rude of me. So I do private consults. I have a Substack where I do a weekly call for people who some of them I've consulted with. Some of them come along just to get support on that healing journey. You see, I think support and confidence is the most important thing, more than anything, because if you just hear something like this and go, right, I'm going to go carnivore, there's a load of things that you don't know. Like people come up and say, what about vitamin C? What about this? What about that? So you need confidence. Actually, I tell you what, I'll just quickly do the vitamin C. Why don't we get scurvy? Because nature knows best. High vitamin C in berries because it's got carbohydrates. If you don't have carbohydrates, you don't need a load of vitamin C. You will not get scurvy. There's plenty in meat if you don't eat carbohydrates. Anyway, so if people need confidence and support, I do that Substack, which is easy to find from my philescott.com. But mostly at the moment, I'm concentrating on a course that I did. I've got a course called Autoimmunity, the Subtraction Method, and that's out there. It's a 30-video online course. That covers everything, not just diet, but also the confidence, the social aspect, the emotional aspect, all the light, water, and magnetism, and even the spiritual side of things. So you can grab that, and also the live events. I love doing them, and to be honest, the live events are probably just about the only thing that makes money in the carnivore world, and still not much. So we do it because we really love it. I do it because I would never knowingly put out any misinformation, because when you've been as sick as I have, you would never risk anybody else being that sick. You know, you see these people with young vegan channels and people are saying, listen, pulling them up, you might be giving misinformation here. They won't listen, they'll carry on because they don't know what it's like to be really damaged. And it is horrific. So, you know, if I'm ever wrong, and I did a blog post on my Substack, actually, the importance of being wrong. You know, always keep an open mind to everything. If anybody's been listening to this and they're still outraged by the horrors of a carnivore diet, keep an open mind, you know, and look into it. So that's what I do, really. Consults, events, online courses, Substack, paid members, that kind of thing.
That's brilliant. I feel it's amazing, and I connect with everything that you said. It's been a big risk for me right now as well, because I have been, you know, like working very hard with the food industry for the past 10 years, and now I'm just like changing everything. So it's a huge risk, especially living in London with the size of the bills and everything. Like I'm just trying to change my way and talk completely like almost like against all my clients and everything that I have been building.
Well done, though, man. Well done. That's courage. That shows some integrity. You know, my first book was all about plant-based stuff. I had to admit that I was completely wrong, and so well done to you. You know, the more people that stand up for this and speak the truth, because it isn't. If you want to make money, people, you know, the vegans go, well, I'm sure you're just having this YouTube channel to make money. I'm shadow banned for speaking out against the nonsense in early 2020. I don't get it. I get $60 every 3 months or something from YouTube, and I still make content. You know, if I wanted to make money off YouTube, I'd have a vegan channel. Or no, I wouldn't. I would have a channel where there's kittens in washing machines and things. You know, that's the kind of channel that makes money, not a carnivore channel.
Exactly. You know, and I have also like a big thing. That also made me change. Like I've seen my mom as well suffering a lot. Like she had a stroke like almost 20 years ago. I was like 16. She had a stroke, and she never came back normal. No, like like, you know, going forward. Like today she's in a care home, like with diabetes and dementia, and it's like. And my grandfather had like a similar, like he had a stroke as well, and he died straight away. You know, my mom came back, but never the same person again. You know. And I don't want to go to.
I had the same thing. My mum had a stroke 1996. As soon as we got her off the statins, she never had another episode like that. She was never quite the same again. But as soon as we got her cholesterol nice and high, which is where it's supposed to be, she was fine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't know nothing of this before. So yeah, today like that is. Like she's already in the care home with dementia and diabetes. Like, okay, like I try to tell the care home, like the people that look after her, to do this and this and this, but I'm not there, not to control what they're doing. It's
so difficult. It's so difficult, man. In those care homes, they can always come along. Would you like a cup of tea? Would you like a cake? Would you like this? Would you like that? I mean, Alzheimer's, dementia is basically type 3 diabetes. Yes. The brain can no longer run on glucose. As soon as you get these people ketogenic and running on fats, quite often the mind comes back as well. It's not just the physical stuff that happens. Depression, ADHD, all these made-up diagnoses, schizophrenia, bipolar, all of these things improve autism, even. You know, I mean, you look at the old Natasha Campbell McBride books, the GAPS books, and that's what it was based on. And once somebody's in the system, it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult because it goes against the dietary guidelines, doesn't it? The really fat dietitians that are trying to tell you what to eat. They're quite often the fattest ones in the hospital.
Yeah, after reading that Grain Brain, like,
Yeah.
it also exploded in my mind. And yeah, so today my mission is like to help people to not fall the same trap that my mom fell, because she was always her whole life she was afraid of fat. I remember since I was a kid she was removing the fat, and she was eating like very small amount of meat, like once or twice a week, and now is removing the fat. Anyway, so yeah, I don't want this for myself, and I don't want this for the others as well, and not for the family members, because you know. So Phil, can you say again please how people can find you?
Yes, yeah, I'll send you the links to put underneath.
Okay.
And but yeah, philescott.com. I have a Phil Escott YouTube channel and on Instagram and things. But I also have a podcast, a Red Pill Sangha podcast, and that you can find on all podcast platforms. And through philescott.com you'll find that. But yeah, my YouTube channel has tons of interviews on and videos about carnivore diet and spirituality and all sorts of things like that. But yeah, from philescott.com you'll find all the events and get to my link tree and see all the things that I do, different social media and stuff. But yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Yeah, I will definitely leave all the links for Phil in the description of this video. So Phil, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me. It was, I think it's really nice to be, quite often I get interviewed on carnivore channels, you know, and to be here to be able to spread this to people who are perhaps maybe on the edge or just thinking about it, or, you know, the more that we can get it out to people like that, and with your following and people who aren't strictly carnivore, let's get this out to them. And again, try it yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Phil.